Greetings everyone and welcome to the Magna Carta Prelims 2024, the original crash course for Prelims Polity 2024 for the UPSC Civil Services. My name is Atish Mathur and I am the curator and the instructor for this program. This lecture will address two things. One, the orientation as to what is it that we try to do with Magna Carta every year, and two, the curriculum which is so uniquely designed and completely evolved from the previous Magna Carta editions. So let's start with the first part. When I speak to you about the Magna Carta series, I'd like to talk to you about the vision and the mission behind Magna Carta. And when we speak about the vision and mission, we actually speak about three things: the vision, the philosophy, and the mission. See, the Magna Carta Prelims program is more than 5 years old. And every year, I've been delivering unquestionable and unbelievable accuracy as far as the polity questions in the prelims exam is concerned. But what is the primary vision behind it? You could still get the same accuracy by reading 1,000 pages, by reading another 300 pages of notes. The idea is efficiency. And efficiency ultimately gives you closure. If there's one thing I can identify Magna Carta with, is closure. If you do this, and if you know this, in one line, you're sorted as far as prelims polity for 2024 is concerned. So my primary aim, vision for Magna Carta is to make sure that all my students get closure with this seemingly mammoth of a subject called polity and the Constitution. And that's the underlying vision. When I speak to you about philosophy, I am driven by 4 words which might sometimes seem like jargon, but for me, they mean everything. The first word is relevant. Relevancy for the civil services exam is a combination of multiple factors. First, the syllabus. Second, the previous year questions. An analysis of the previous year questions teaches you some very important outcomes. What areas are asked, what areas are not asked. From the areas that are asked, what kind of questions in what capacity from those areas are asked. Something as simple as you have never been asked an article number from polity is a very important deduction from PYQ analysis. Something as simple as technical clauses and subclauses of fundamental rights are not relevant really for the prelims exam. Something as simple as derivations of Supreme Court judgments are not necessarily asked in polity. Article 14, 19 and 21 are relatively more important than the rest of the fundamental rights with respect to polity. If they're asking criminal justice, they're asking it in the context of the criminal justice system and not just Articles 20 or 22. This is what I mean by relevance. And to be relevant year after year for the last 5 years, I have to tweak, evolve, and customize the way I deliver the curriculum, keeping in mind the changing trends year after year. Something as simple as how relevant is current affairs actually for the polity part of it? Does current affairs inspire basic questions? Does it inspire technical questions? Does it inspire deductive questions? That's something we figure out when we really aim for relevance. 2. Comprehensive. Relevancy and comprehensiveness are two unrelated but correlated terms at the same time. They're unrelated because what is relevant may not necessarily have to be comprehensive. But how they're related is whatever is relevant has to be done in the most comprehensive manner. On top of it, whatever is not relevant still has to be covered in the minutest manner, in the most touch and go manner, in the most bare minimum manner, that just in case there is a question, it is always going to be a very basic question. If it's going to be a basic question, we've still covered it. And in all of this, we can't be doing 500 pages because at the end of the day, the prelims is an input-output game. You've got to get 110 in the prelims exam. And polity should be the least of your concerns. And if there's one thing true about the civil services prelims exam, it is repetition and revision. And the more enormous your resource, the lesser are the chances that you can actually revise them one after the other. So therefore, my primary aim has always been to keep it as short yet as comprehensive as possible. And this balance between comprehensiveness and being compact is something that I always achieve and try to achieve year after year. And finally, singularity, consolidation. Everything that you need to know about Article 21 should be in one page for the prelims exam. Every correlation and every application of rule of law to every other concept in the Constitution should be in one mind map or one flowchart. Rule of law leads to absence of arbitrary power, leads to, let us say, judicial review, leads to, let us say, executive delegation. This entire ecosystem has to be in one consolidated mind map. The relationship between independence of judiciary, federalism, and judicial review, all of it ultimately linking to rule of law. That is closure, because that's what the UPSC asks. So these are the 4 basic goals that I try to follow so that you get what is called closure. And this year, because it's the 5th year, so therefore we have to, it's beyond the 5th year actually, so therefore we have to set a higher benchmark. For the last 5 years, we have been promising and delivering 80% accuracy in the prelims exam. This year, I'm setting the target to 90% for myself to ensure, and I will be as categorical as I can be, that 90% of the questions from polity that will come in the civil services exam 2024 could be solved from what you learn at the Magna Carta prelims program. It's that simple, it's that clear cut. I've been doing this year after year. Now it's only time to raise higher and fight harder. So on that note, let me introduce you to the syllabus and the curriculum. Let's go over this step by step. The polity prelims syllabus actually is a combination of polity and governance. There are 5 things that are written. They are the constitution, political system, panchayati raj. Now these are polity-centric topics. Public policy and rights issues are a little bit of polity and a little bit of governance all in one. Now obviously, these 5 topics are not just not arranged in a logical sequence, they're also fairly open-ended. So what one has to do is break them into more reasonable themes, more logical themes, and in a more logical sequence. So this year, for 2024, I will be delivering 12 lectures for the Magna Carta prelims exam, for the Magna Carta prelims, in exactly this manner. In lecture number 1, I will be speaking to you about 5 things. I'll first give you a clear-cut tabular classification of laws, because nowadays we've had questions on criminal justice and other forms of laws. Then very conceptual, we'll speak about majorities, the passage of laws, because this would apply to everything else. And in the very first lecture, I'll give you a tabular understanding of the forms and types of constitutional amendments. Why is it important? Because it will therefore make us understand lecture 4 till about lecture 11 in better detail. Once I'm done with this, I will go through my proprietary and thankfully very well received my 4 golden rules of polity. These are nothing but 4 academic tricks that serve 2 purposes. 1, for a question that you have no clue about, it helps you take an educated guess. 2, for a question that you have some clue about, it reinforces what you were originally wanting to do. Extremely important. You know these 4 golden rules, you effectively know all of polity put together. And this time, I have developed a set of categorical tactics that we are going to use for the prelims exam. We're going to look at the devil's advocate method, the correlative method, the explicit implicit method, the analogy method, the devil's advocate method, the countering method. There are some methods that I've devised, especially now in a more structured form for 2024, and this will help you get more questions right. The prelims tactics are not purely academic, they're semi-academic, whereas the golden rules are purely academic techniques. This is lecture number 1. 5 very, very important topics that will form the base for everything else that follows. Lecture 2. Lecture 2 is going to have 3 significantly important topics that the UPSC has been asking, especially in the last 5 years. First, the rule of law. Second, principles of natural justice. Third, constitutionalism and related concepts. See, rule of law, its ingredients, its applications, its constituents, its correlations, its corollaries, they have been asked in the exam. You've got to do them right. The link from rule of law to federalism, from rule of law to judicial review, from rule of law to constitutionalism, that has to be established. The flowchart that I was talking to you about has to necessarily be done right here itself. And because in the recent past, the Supreme Court has started asking doctrines, so we'll have to do the principles of natural justice. And when we do the principles of natural justice, we will do them not only in the context of fundamental rights, but also administrative law. So rule of law, its a relationship with principles of natural justice independently, and constitutionalism. So this includes constitutionalism, constitutional law, and the Constitution. The difference between the 3, the classifications of each of these, the impact of each of these, all has to be done in lecture number 2. There have been serious prelims questions that have been asked from these 3 extremely important topics. It is here itself that I will also pick up some important doctrines as far as our constitution is concerned, right at the very beginning, because it's a prelims crash course. So I'll tell you what the doctrine of eclipse is, doctrine of severability, doctrine of, say, harmonious construction. In brief, also tell you what basic structure doctrine is, the doctrine of repugnancy, the doctrine of state action, all the doctrines that are possibly there. We'll just do a quick review of this because this prepares us to understand the Constitution. So lecture 2 is as vital as lecture 1 to, to not only get direct questions right in the pre, but to also understand what follows thereafter. From here on, we will move to lecture 3, which is legal history. Now, I've generally not done legal history in a lot of detail previously. Last year, I had done legal history to a significant extent. I would this time also be doing legal history, but in a completely evolved manner. I'd be looking at constitutional antecedents, which basically means British pre-constitutional laws from the Indian Councils Act, Regulating Acts, Government of India Acts, to also documents that were produced during the Indian freedom movement, which have had an impact in the making of the Constitution. So the legal history actually includes 3 parts: British laws, documents that have been produced during the Indian freedom movement. For example, a document called the Revolutionary, published by the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, which spoke of some extremely radical but very, very vital ideas which were reflected in the Constituent Assembly in a minor form through one of its directive principles. And thirdly, the Constituent Assembly and its functions. So all of these 3 things would be covered in legal history. Out of the 3, British laws and Constituent Assembly are far more important for the prelims exam from a polity point of view, but to just ensure that just in case modern history asks you some documents produced during the Indian freedom struggle, I thought I'll have your bases covered. So that's lecture number 3 for you. Lecture number 4, we've had a question on citizenship in the last 5 years, but not necessarily anything to do with territory, but we will still keep our bases covered because comprehensiveness is also one of our goals. So lecture 4 is territory and citizenship. We'll study them together, and we'll not just look at the constitutional provisions, because territory and citizenship also have an intersection to political system and public policy. So what are the dimensions of territory? What is the actual policy on Indian citizenship? Those are the kind of areas that we should be covering as far as the prelims Magna Carta is concerned. And then comes the grand old theme of the preamble, rights, directive principles, and fundamental duties. Now, this is 100% conversion. In some form or another, you are assuredly getting a question from here in the prelims exam. But that's not it. It has a very close intersection with public policy and rights issues. So what we're going to do here is do a comparative review, do classifications of all of the 4 together, link it to the international rights system because we've had questions on UDHR, then pick up the preamble, rights, directive principles and duties independently, do some tricks that we've always done: identification of directive principles and duties, identification of different types of directive principles. You never have to memorize them. The tricks that I'll give you are more than enough. You will sail through. And more importantly, when we do these things, we'll also touch upon sectors. So for example, when we're doing articles 20 and 22, we would have to do the criminal justice system. So right from a journey of crime to the regulation of law and order, to the sector of prisons, to the kind of punishments that are offered, the whole 360 degree of it has to be covered with 20 and 22 in exactly 1 page. UPSC is going to ask you very basic questions, but you need to know the basic questions for you to answer them. You need to know the basics to answer the basic questions. Similarly, when we do 15 and 16 together, and that's how we generally do it, we'll also do a one-pager on the reservation policy of the country. Who gets it? Where do they get it? How do they get it? And what are its correlated constitutional provisions? There have been questions on it in the last 2 years. So related sectors. For example, when we do 21A, I'll give you an overview of the regulation of the education sector. In the last 10 years, there has been a question on the RTE Act and its applicability. For example, legal aid not only is a directive principle, it's also recognized as a fundamental right implicitly. So the legal aid ecosystem. Whatever related bodies, sectoral regulations, and the broad sectoral overview is concerned, we'll pick it up here itself. We'll not wait for us to finish the same thing in bodies later. So whatever bodies can be covered correlative to preamble rights, directive principles, and duties, we'll cover them right there. So when we do 15 and 16, we will make sure through 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, we'll correlatively also finish National Commission for Scheduled Castes, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, and National Commission for Backward Classes. Because in lecture number 1, I would have, in the prelims tactics, also given you a very important tactic to identify bodies, which would have covered in lecture number 1 already. We'll apply it here in lecture 5. So it's very, very accurately and very, very keenly designed. Lecture 6. Legislatures of the Union and the States. Again, this would overlap with political system as well. So when we do this, we also do the sector of elections, the Election Commission of India, a broad overview of election reforms. And mind you, we are in the election year this year. So there is a very strong chance you're going to get a question on elections in 2024 and assuredly in 2025 as well. So the electoral policy, electoral organizations, electoral reforms, very broadly, nothing in detail as far as reforms is concerned. The union and the state legislatures, their presiding officers, their procedures, their parliamentary business functions, and of course, related committees. All of them will be done together in addition to an understanding of the parliamentary system of government, because in effect, this is our political system. So that's lecture number 6 for you. As far as lecture number 7 is concerned, we'll do the same thing. We'll do the union and the state executive. We'll do the president. We'll do the governor. We'll do the ministers, both at the union level, at the state level. And we will also do the civil service. So when we do the civil service, because the civil service is a part, the central civil service is a part of the union executive. The All India Civil Service, when posted at the center, is a part of the union executive. So when we do this, we also cover the UPSC here in itself and finish it up because it's correlated to the civil service. And that's the executive. We'll also link in the Attorney General and the Advocate General here in itself because they are effectively sort of, not entirely, but definitely partially a part of the executive. So that's how the course has been designed in that specific context. That's how I'm different this year than the last 5 years. Then lecture number 8. It's not just the judiciary, it's also judiciary and legal systems, right? Now, the criminal justice system would have been covered in L5, but the legal system as a whole, the criminal justice system is a part of the legal system, but the legal system as a whole, judges, lawyers, litigants, courts, judges, lawyers, litigants. We'll look at the higher judiciary, the lower judiciary, the alternate dispute resolution systems, which also includes lok adalats, also includes Gram Nyayalays, and so on and so forth. It will take care of the entire judicial ecosystem. The questions that have generally come from here have been about the powers of the judiciary and very basic equipment questions or feature questions of alternate legal systems. Very surprisingly, we've also seen one question in the last 5 years on a corporate lawyer and an advocate and the Bar Council of India. So the regulation of the legal sector, the sectoral overview, which also becomes an instrument of public policy, will also be covered in judiciary and legal systems. From here itself, I'll move to lecture 9, which is separation of powers. We'll do the doctrine, we'll do its correlated applications, the relationship between separation of powers and rule of law, constitutionalism, judicial review. We'll do the exceptions to it, we'll do the transgressions to it. When we do separation of powers, we obviously touch upon checks and balances as a natural outcome to it. We'll understand whether it is a basic structure principle or not, and we do basic examples. So we do, how is the legislature separate from the executive separate from the judiciary, the legislature separate from the judiciary, and how do the three trinities of power keep a check on one another? That is lecture number 9. From here itself, we'll move to lecture number 10, federalism. And this is a big one. So when we do federalism, center-state relations, emergency, applications of federalism, types of federalism, institutions around federalism. So whether it is water state disputes, interstate water disputes, whether it's the Niti Aayog, whether it's about organizations such as the Interstate Council, and so on and so forth, the GST Council, everything, administrative relations, financial relations, legislative relations, all of it, everything together in maximum 3 to 4 pages on the board in front of you. So that's lecture number 10, federalism and its related aspects. Lecture 11 is local self-government and minor miscellaneous provisions, just to ensure there is closure, there's comprehensiveness, and there is consolidation. Now, mind you, the prelims syllabus specifically says Panchayati Raj, and local self-government includes both rural and urban. There have been questions on the Panchayat Extension Scheduled Act. There have been questions on the 5th schedule, the 6th schedule, some special advancements, questions on the Forest Dwellers' Rights Act in the last 10 years. So all of those things, therefore, have to make us do a comprehensive overview of the local self-government sector. So we pick up rural, we pick up urban, we pick up rural plus urban, we pick up special areas. The reason we pick up special areas is because special areas is an application of federalism. So when we look at 5th areas, 6th schedule areas, when we look at PISA, when you look at Article 371A onwards, these are all exceptions to the federal structure, and they have a correlation to local self-government, which is why lecture 11 comes after lecture 10. And apart from that, minor miscellaneous provisions such as languages, other administrative provisions, maybe interstate commerce, we'll cover all of those things in lecture number 11. In lecture 12, whatever remaining bodies are there, constitutional bodies, statutory bodies, and also regulatory bodies. The UPSC started to ask regulatory bodies in the context of public policy and rights issues. Something as simple as, let us say, the Petroleum Regulatory Board, the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority. All of these have to be correlated to current affairs. So that's the larger ecosystem. So think of a topic. The topic is plotted here. For instance, say tribunals. Tribunals would be covered in judiciary and legal systems. For example, let us say CAG. CAG would be covered in bodies. Let's say Public Accounts Committee, legislatures. First past the post system, legislatures. So every topic that you could think of has been reorganized in these 12 lectures. Now, how is it going to be delivered to you? That's the important part. These are going to be recorded lectures, and I'm recording them beforehand so that there are no delays when they have to be actually uploaded. You will find lectures every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, starting the 7th of February, which I think happens to be a Wednesday. So on 7th of February 2024, you are going to be seeing this lecture and lecture number 1. Then on 9th of February, which is a Friday, you will see lecture number 2, and so on and so forth. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday is how you're going to see these lectures. Now, by this estimate, we should be done with the Magna Carta prelims by the 26th of February. And for the whole of February, every Sunday, for those of you who do sign up, I would be taking live doubt sessions with you from the portal itself. I'll share the discussion link with you, and you can ask me questions there itself. So that's that. This is new in 2024. What else is new? In 2024, after a sufficient chunk is over, for example, after L5, I will do a PYQ lecture covering everything from L1 to L5. So this year, previous year questions from the last 10 years pertaining to specific topics would be added at the end of each sort of lecture. So till about L5, at the end of L5, within L5, you will also have a PYQ lecture. Similarly, at the end of L7, you would have a PYQ lecture. At the end of L8, you would have a PYQ lecture. At the end of L9 and L10, you would have a PYQ lecture. At the end of L11, you would have a PYQ lecture. At the end of L12, you will have a PYQ lecture. It's going to be a part of the same lecture, but I'm going to make sure after we are done with L5, I discuss the previous year questions, solve them in front of you. It's not just about telling you, oh, this is the question, this is the answer. It's about making you think the way I do so that you can come to the answer that I do. And the reason we've got to do live PYQs in class, the reason we've got to discuss PYQs all over again, not only so that we can apply what we've learnt, you also understand the way the UPSC frames their questions. So that will be taken care of. Now, your syllabus also includes current events. So not only are current affairs integrated in the lecture, you also know every year I release something called the final lap. And this year, the final lap for all general studies subjects, which is basically my current affairs compilation for what I think is relevant for the prelims 2024, is going to be released on the 15th of March. Anything beyond that most likely will not be asked in the prelims anyway. So this would cover all polity, governance, and all GS related contemporary developments as far as the prelims is concerned. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much. It is undoubtedly a pleasure to do this. It is as thrilling, as challenging, and as difficult as it could be to make sure that there's a 90% accuracy. But if it's not challenging for me, I will not be able to make it worthwhile for you. I'd like to thank you for choosing me, for choosing Magna Carta, giving it the love that you always have, and only pushing me to get better. Because a Magna Carta can't be the same every year. We've got to get better year after year, do more, deliver more, and effectively teach better. Thank you for being you, and thank you for making me teach better every year. Really looking forward to seeing you in the doubt classes, and also I hope the Magna Carta does justice to you by delivering 90% of the prelims questions. And the Magna Carta comes with a delivery guarantee, which means this is contractually guaranteed for. You are assured that these lectures are delivered on these very dates, which is also why I ensured that there's already a backup, there are no tech glitches on my end, and everything's taken care of. Thank you again. See you in the lectures. Bye bye.